What's up, guys? Sub-Zero here, not for a VOD review. Today's gonna be another talky type video about this world's win trading situation. Call it drama, call it competitive. I mean, something that can be really important for the competitive future of TFT. And I literally got up today, I went to work, I checked my phone, and they had posted this. And so if you guys haven't seen it, I'm gonna watch through it and kind of give you guys my thoughts and then talk about more just like broadly what I want to talk about. So
hello everyone, I'm Michael Sherman, head of TFT Esports, here to share an update on the ruling for Shatoran from the Into the Arcane Tactician's Crown. Additionally, I'll walk through some of our team's priorities moving forward. To sum it up, we rushed a call and made a mistake, and we want to make sure we own up to that and set up systems to ensure that the same mistake doesn't happen again.
The second part is quite interesting.
We had access to initially. It was clear that Shatoran had made a poor decision in Game 13, but it wasn't enough to indicate intentional underperformance at the time. With the finals the next day, we found it important to move quickly and make a public ruling to respond to questions about which players should be in the final.
This, by the way, I think is something that I'll talk about all of this more, but I think this is something that like a lot of people are not putting enough focus on, the fact that obviously they had to make an insanely quick decision.
Since then, we received new video footage and data from our partners that candidly we should have reasonably had access to during the initial investigation, and conducted follow-up interviews with Shatoran himself. From this, we've identified several other instances of underperformance during key moments of Game 13. Some of these instances had reasonable explanations, such as nerves during the tournament, device unfamiliarity, and exhaustion from how late he was playing, but we identified a number of decisions that differed from his regular play throughout the tournament and did not live up to expectations.
I think I have an example here. Yeah.
During stage 5-2, Shatoran opted not to complete a 2-star gangplank available in the shop. During our interview with him, he noted that he was scouting the entire round to maintain his win streak.
I mean, yeah, this one's pretty egregious.
No positioning changes or other actions that round, including a conscious decision to not star up gangplank despite having the econ and time to do so. This example plus other examples of underperformance don't match Shatoran.
And actually, do we have no, we don't. I mean, he actually fights Lilo this exact fight. So I mean,
econ and time to do so.
He knew Lilo was in his pool, I'm sure.
Other examples of underperformance don't match Shatoran's level of play in other games, and requires us to change our initial ruling. The ruling has now been updated to reflect a finding of intentional underperformance. You can visit the linked article to review the full details below.
And I'll have that. I'll kind of read through it a little bit.
We still have no evidence that there was any direct coordination or collusion between Shatoran and any other player.
This I also want to talk about.
Even if we made this ruling during the tournament, the finals would not have changed. No other players were responsible for Shatoran's underperformance, and they shouldn't be punished as a result. This ruling means Shatoran will be suspended from the competition during our next set.
So one set ban.
We'll be revoking his pricing from the
and he loses all his money.
We see competitive TFT as a key part of the game's future. I want to emphasize that we're taking this mistake and our new ruling incredibly seriously. Looking ahead, this incident has been a forcing function for reevaluating our policies for how we can maintain and streamline competitive integrity going forward. We're taking a three-pronged approach, focused on education.
I think this part is really good.
On the education side, we'll be rolling out new materials that players must review before competitions, including general compliance guidelines, which cover underperformance and its potential penalties. When it comes to prevention, we're planning on making changes to the Tactician's Crown format.
This is also really good.
Players who don't have enough points to progress in the...
They've done some work on this, but I mean, obviously more can be done because I mean, Shatoran in the last game had literally nothing to play for. He was guaranteed out. And there were a number of people who were playing who were guaranteed in, which is kind of interesting as well.
The tournament. Our goal is to prevent more situations where a player is competing with no possibility of continuing through the tournament. In edge cases where players who can't progress remain in a lobby, we'll have high-level spotters actively watching their POV to identify irregular plays if they happen. No matter what, players are expected to play their best when they reach this level of competition. Additionally, we're going to be adding new recording and camera requirements.
This is really good as well.
Real-time coaching or collusion. Finally, the Tactician's Crown is a global competition based on individual performance, but our current regional performance slots reward regions for their overall performance. Going forward, we're moving those slots into our new Tier 1 circuit we announced last week.
This one is kind of interesting as well.
There will still be ways for a region to earn an extra slot, but they'll be awarded to individuals instead of an overall region. Expect more details here as we head into set 15.
which should be
Regarding
sick.
enforcement, we'll be refining our investigation process to ensure that we have a more comprehensive set of steps for reviewing reports of underperformance. We'll be recording all player POVs going forward to ensure we have full access to video footage earlier in our investigations. This is a quick snapshot of what we're able to commit to now, and we'll be back closer to Cyber City's Tactician's Crown selection and reporting processes. Lastly, we truly believe
Okay, that's
as an
basically the end of
esport,
it.
TFT has the ability to bring together players from all around the world, allowing players to build relationships, have fun, and compete regardless of their background. And we ask for your feedback and support in making this the best competitive community possible. In the meantime,
Thumbs
thank you
up.
for watching, and we'll see you on the Convergence.
We'll see you on the Convergence. All right, thumbs up. Okay, so they also wrote this entire ruling out, and I am going to watch a VOD while I yap through some of my thoughts about this, kind of very freeform, because I have a few thoughts about this. So first things first, yay! Like, I think this is the result that a lot of people wanted. They wanted Shatoran to be punished. The part where maybe I shouldn't jump too far ahead, but yeah, a lot of people wanted Shatoran to be punished. So this is a good positive result for everybody. And I do think the punishment is pretty reasonable. I think I talked about like a year ban and all the prize money being revoked. This ends up being a set ban and the prize money being revoked. That's still really, really big from the perspective of somebody who, potentially wants to play competitive TFT. That's, 4 months that you don't get to really play competitive whatsoever, which, I mean, is short in some ways, but is also quite long in other ways. That can really hurt your momentum as a competitive player. And I mean, it should, right? You should be severely punished for doing something at the highest level of play of Wintrading. So I think the punishment is pretty reasonable for. Wait, this is so funny. It's literally just hiding the other augments. But I think the punishment is pretty reasonable. Okay, so that's step one. And then I already started kind of talking about the other piece of it, which is they said, because Liluo could not really do anything. It's not that he, communicated with Shatoran and said, hey, win trade me. There was probably no communication between them. And, if there was, there seems like there was no communication between them. So because of that, they're essentially saying, well, you can't punish Liluo in this situation. And that's the one thing that I was a little hesitant about, because I do think if you're Shatoran, you could maybe make the argument, well, I win traded, I managed to get Liluo into the finals, and I mean, I got punished, but I mean, it worked out. I got Liluo into the finals. And so I was thinking about that in some ways, being like, that's a little, like, I mean, if it was Shatoran's goal to get Liluo into the finals, he succeeded. Now, the downside for Shatoran, of course, is that he loses out on, something like, what was it, like 10K? Something around 10K, which is, fiddlesticks too, what the fuck? So, I mean, 10K is not, it's not nothing, and it means a lot to a lot of people. I don't know what, financial background Shatoran's from, but depending on, how well off you are, that can either be a lot of money or still a decent amount of money. But so he loses out on his money, and the big thing is losing out on the ability to compete next set. Losing that completely is really, really, harmful for your ability to be a competitive TFT player. So I was on initial reaction kind of like, well, if they say basically that, like, if you don't like straightforwardly communicate with another person, you can still win trade for them, that does still give some players an incentive to win trade. However, after thinking about it even some more, I think it's honestly fine from the perspective that, like, this is a huge, huge penalty. And I don't think, and a lot of people have talked about kind of like the cultural difference in that, like the Chinese TFT community is really, really big on this kind of like playing for your region type thing, and might actually like flame somebody if they were not like quote unquote like playing for their region. Like if Shatoran did not int in this situation, it has been said that, he would have been actually like flamed pretty hard by the Chinese community. And I mean, I've heard this from a lot of, people who know a lot more about the Chinese TFT community than me. So, I mean, I fully believe that, but I do think even at that point, like, even if that is true, that the community is going to get upset if you don't win trade, I mean, one, now you have this kind of situation where you can just say, like, well, they've said that you can't win trade, like, and so you like Riot Games is saying, oh my god, one player chose to split there. That's incredible. I like the different splits. But yeah, like they've said that this is against the rules. So now you kind of have that to hide behind a little bit. And still, like, even if you are the most like play for my region, all I care about is my region, you still have some amount of self-interest, right? Even if you really, really care about your region doing well, and that's like a very, very high priority, you still have a lot of you still care about yourself and your own self-preservation. And so I do think, like, with the idea that now this is the penalty for blatant win trading is a set ban and losing all your prize money. I do think, like, after thinking about it, that is enough to dissuade someone from win trading. I do think, like, it's very hard to imagine someone intentionally win trading now with that, possible penalty in mind, where it's just like, yeah, you're going to, I mean, you're going to not be able to play TFT for an entire set. I mean, that is a huge, huge, huge penalty. So I think that is, I think that's really, really good. And I do think, if you guys don't have the context to this, when this happened in the past, when a How ended up win trading in it was set 11, maybe set 11 world championships, and one of the previous world championships, a How got fined like a percentage of his prize money, not even 100%, I think it was, and was still allowed to play competitively in future sets. So I really think that, like, the previous way, the previous penalty was light enough that I think a lot of people could say, you know what, I'm gonna win trade, and like, what's the downside? I lose a little bit of money, I still get to play competitive. I'm certainly gonna do that. But now with this new regime in place, like, people are going to be, I think, way, way, way less likely to win trade. So I think that is enough of a deterrent where you don't need to do the thing where you're going to say, like, we're going to remove Lilo from the final lobby, even though, in an ideal world, maybe we would do that, but it starts to get really, really messy. Then the solutions start to get really, really messy. Like, oh, you have to like replay this game, or you have to like figure out what the win trading would have done. I do think this is a much more neat way to go about it. And if people continue to win trade in the future, I mean, full set bans, or I mean, if Lee. If Shituren win trades, he takes a set off, and then set 15 he win trades, then I think you're at the point where you just like permaban them from the game, and I think that's obviously like completely reasonable. So I think this is a great step in the right direction. Now, a few other things that people yapped about. One, that this should have been the decision all along. Now, I won't disagree with this, because obviously I am from the perspective that, yeah, I do think this should have been the decision all along. I mean, I talked about this right after it happened, and I said, basically this, that he should have his prize money revoked, and that he should probably be banned for like a set. So, I mean, I obviously think that is the case. But to everybody who's saying this should have been the initial argument, I do think it is really important to stress that they had a very small amount of time to come up with this ruling, because remember, day 2 finished, and day 3, starts at, whatever it is, like 6 a.m. America's time or whatever, but they have to get a ruling out obviously in advance of day 3, because, some people did have a possibility in their mind of like, oh, they could replace, Lilo with Precedent in the final lobby, which I never really expected to happen. As a pipe dream, I kind of wanted it to happen selfishly as an NA fan, and then also just because, I do think it would have been the best thing in terms of competitive integrity. But they needed to get a ruling out, by that kind of like evening, so that anybody who's playing the World Championship, so that Precedent doesn't sleep through his alarm if they're going to put him into the World Championships, and also just for there to be clarity. So that's a really short amount of time to be able to make a ruling. And so I do understand that they looked at the information available, and they did not see, enough that it rose to their threshold, which I don't, obviously I think was not correct, but I also do think they're coming at it from the perspective of like, not just a reasonable doubt that this person is win trading, but like really, really like confirm that this person is win trading, because they don't want to, ban a false positive in a situation like this. So that's something that I think a lot of people were kind of like missing in their evaluation of this, is kind of just like thinking about the fact that they had such little time to make this ruling. So I do think it is quite reasonable for them to have kind of to flub a little bit on the initial ruling. Now, I know a lot of people also wanted to yap about like Mort's video about this, where he kind of talked about how, you just have to, there were multiple razors involved, Occam's razor, Hanlon's razor. Honestly, I did not watch the full Mort rundown, but I read a lot of comments about people yapping about what he was saying. And I do think a couple of things on that. I mean, one, Mort obviously had no part in this ruling. Mort was not like, I'm going to decide that, this happens to this player. Like that's just not really how it works. So what happened at the end of the day is the competitive team made a ruling, and then Mort just basically has to trust that, because I mean, there's no way Mort has time to go through Kobuko on 7. What the heck? There's no way Mort has time to like go through and spend all this time like reviewing all the VODs and things like that. That's what the competitive team is for. And so at the end of the day, like, am I upset that Mort trusted in his competitive team and just went along with the ruling? Absolutely not. A lot of people said, well, like, he should have just not said anything if he wasn't going to go against it. But I mean, Mort is someone who is very passionate about his job, is not going to, not speak his mind, even if, he thinks that it might upset some people. And, I completely respect that about Mort. And I think it's completely reasonable for him to say, this is how I feel about it. And, I wonder what his response is to them changing the ruling. I mean, he's probably happy about it because it's going to be less of a fire under Riot's butt. So, I mean, I think that's honestly for the best in all things. So yeah, I don't think you can flame Mort really at all. He's somebody who wants to be in contact with the community. I mean, for better or for worse, he got a lot of people talking about this, probably for worse in this situation. But I don't want to end up in a world, right, where Mort feels really like muzzled and he's like, well, I don't want to talk about this because I tried talking about it last time and the community like flamed the heck out of me. I want to live in a world where Mort can candidly talk about his feelings about competitive TFT. I think that's really good for the game about him to be able to talk about that and, like, love or hate what he says. I think that is really, really important. So that is, that's another piece of it. And yeah, I mean, the other pieces of kind of like evidence that they added, the fact that he didn't upgrade a unit, and there's probably even some more stuff. I think, oh yeah, they also talked about in the article about how he opened an item anvil and just waited forever to slam that item, and nowhere else in the rest of the tournament did he take that long to slam an item anvil. I mean, yeah, I think that's stuff that could have, like, I think a lot of people also talked about this, right? They were like, he opened an item, like there were people who saw this and said he opened an item anvil and like didn't slam forever. And a lot of people, I mean, that's just something that is like, to have that context, because you could say I had really bad ping, like I couldn't slam the item anvil, but having that context is what's really important. And so I guess the last piece of it is I really, really like all of their kind of like reforms that they have come up with, where big things where they're going to require POVs to be recorded and to be streamed, so that you're going to have like this player POV, or maybe not streamed, but like cam and the recording, so that you can guarantee be able to go back and look at the entire player POV. I think cam is actually like, this is a situation where you had the cam because he was playing on LAN, because the Chinese players play on LAN, but actually it's kind of funny, like I don't think that didn't end up being a part of it whatsoever, is like the player cam part of it. But I do think it certainly could have been. And so I do think that's good at the end of the day for, us to have that information, or I guess, Riot to have that information when they're doing this kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think that is a really, really good resolution. I like the idea, like I said, they're sometimes late into these tournaments, there's people playing who are guaranteed in. They're probably not going to remove those. It sounds like they're not going to remove people who are guaranteed in, because it's fun to run up the score and stuff like that. That is kind of a downside, though, is that like in terms of competitive integrity, you would actually want to remove all the players who are guaranteed in and guaranteed out. Like if someone's such a high score that they're guaranteed making it to day 3, then they have nothing to play for as well. The difference, though, is that, people will play for like notoriety and things like that. So it's probably not an issue. But, getting rid of the people who are guaranteed out is certainly a really good change. And one, we've had issues with this before, and they actually did this, a few sets ago, where they, they made it so they're more aggressively cutting people day 2. And so I do think like they've made strides in this. They really just need that kind of like last piece of editing it, like one more cut of players and making sure. The problem is they cut to top 16, so I don't know how exactly. Maybe they're going to cut like more. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers are going to look like exactly, because of the fact that like I mean, that was you can't cut 8 people from that top 16, or else you would have 8 people, and that would just be the finals. So yeah, I mean, like I said, you can cut like the bottom 4 and the top 4 and say top 4 and bottom 4 out, but then that also creates like weird situations where like, well, what if 4th place is not guaranteed in? I don't know. I'll leave that to Riot Games to figure out, but I do trust that they will make a positive decision in this, and I like a lot of the changes that they are making in this situation. So yeah, I mean, those are most of my thoughts, I think. Yeah, good job on Riot for making a big change like this. I'm gonna jump towards like the end of the VOD, yeah, so we can see how this board ends up. I mean, he ends up getting a JG and ends up smurfing on the whole board. I mean, this setup is so disgusting for. Oh, actually, he might actually go second here to this crazy board. Okay, let's watch right at the end. Oh, he gets Bruiser mod for the. Okay, maybe that's all that you need. But yeah, hats off to Riot for. I think some people are upset that, you know, like, well, I can't believe they, you know, didn't rule correctly from the start, but I would much rather them, you know, rule incorrectly and then change their minds than, you know, never change their minds and end up in this situation where competitive integrity is undermined. Because I do think this puts me in a place where, once again, I'm really like, I feel good about the competitive integrity for TFT. These are issues, and we'll have to get past them. And these things happen in different games where there's competitive integrity issues. And so, you know, it's crazy to think that, you know, it's never going to be a problem, that these things are never going to be a problem. But I do think at the end of the day, you know, Riot is doing their best to make these things better, to fix these things. And yeah, I mean, I think they did their best in this situation, and they have a lot of tools in place to allow them to do better in future situations. So yeah, that's really my main thoughts. I kind of hope that Greya loses this fight so that that can be the end of the video, because if he wins this fight, then we have like one more fight potentially. But actually, man, this Aphelios unit is broken. I think it is actually going to be the end of it. Okay, so that's perfect. Let me know what you guys think about all this stuff, because I know there's a lot of really, really strong opinions about all this stuff. So let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.